and we're working out what the days um, that are real to us. It's so exciting to note that that God is in all that we're doing. He continues to be. He continues to establish himself as the true God. He continues to establish the fact that there is none else, and He is the only Lord. He is the only what support, supply, the fragrance of our future. Um, you know, oh, it's God. Am I making sense? Yes, I am. I hope you hear me. So, what are you hearing when I talk? Who is that voice? Who is that great voice? Tell me, who is that voice that we hear and we know so well? Is it my voice? Is it Granny's voice? Is it Daddy's voice? And we have been really looking at this whole context of who's the voice and working the contextual imagery. And I say imagery because when we come back to this whole idea of hearing, like you heard me starting at the first you wasn't hearing anything, and then you heard me, and then I said something, and then I see, and then he's like, oh, is he mumble jumbling? What's going on? Is there something going on? Because once you're not hearing a voice, there's always the uncertainty of whether I'm talking, whether you're hearing, whether something's wrong. And with this new normal that we're going through, it's very exciting to hear because what you consider the voice and how you interpret that. Because what's happening here is that the first thing you hear normally is, are you hearing me? Are you hearing me? So that is something that people are now finding very interesting in terms of uh, uh, how we respond and we introduce ourselves. Are you hearing me? Because the technology is such, and we are dependent on airwaves. So we depend on Wi-Fi. Like a few minutes ago, I thought I was on. I was there talking, and I recognized, hey, there was no Wi-Fi. And it just halted for a moment. And I didn't realize that. But so that you had no voice, you wasn't hearing anything because there was a connection of that Wi-Fi. And I found this so interesting in terms of how we discern that kind of connectivity. How do we really put that into perspective? What is it that causes us to hear, and how do we identify our Wi-Fi between ourselves and the Lord? And I know that you have that answer. He, the Holy Ghost, because it's a spirit. It is that undescribable identity within oneself that one cannot see, touch, or feel. Or feel? I can't say feel because some of you say you feel the Holy Ghost. So let's say can't see or touch, you know, can't smell either, but some of you feel. That's an emotion sometimes, and I'm not debating that experience because that's important for some of us, and that's real actually for many people, and it's scriptural too. People had a feeling because you read verbs, joy, rejoice, moved, start with, do not fear. So there must be some kind of feeling and emotion when the Holy Spirit is very present, and so that. But what I'm getting at here is that He is our connectivity between speak and hear. So when God speaks, or when we say He speaks, we must be saying also that the Holy Ghost is creating a connectivity, uh, a link. That's a good word. for today, a link between him and me. So do I press that link? Well, that link is activated immediately because that link really ought to be always activated. So I'm trying to help us in the semantics of bringing clarity to the sentence, and so that you can appreciate what we're talking about. So we need heed the Holy Ghost in terms of the voice. Now, I was sharing some things last week about Old Testament and New Testament, or rather, I just started to talk about in the Old Testament, the Holy Spirit was not as active as he is, or rather, in his present revelation to us, which is in the New Testament, is quite different to the Old. And so in the Old, you will find him resting upon men and being cited as the presence of the Lord. The age of the Lord came. So we know that there was an angelic presence that established God. There was a presence of the Lord, or the Lord was in the midst. But in today, we have the Lord in us, and we are told to pray without ceasing, and we are told that He is always, as they were told in the Old Testament, I will be with you to the end. Wherever you go, I'll be there. But when it came to hearing, there seems to have be a particular environment or particular need for hearing. And so that, again, how do we work that out? Now, we've been talking about Adam and Abram. And of course, we talked about David, and we talked about Mary and Elizabeth. But I was thinking about the whole factor of working out how do we put names to the voice, because I did say the voice is not it, the voice is a person. So we have to come to the place where we do find a name, or we attribute that voice somewhere. And I was thinking about Samuel when at age 5 he is sleeping and he hears his name and jumps up, and he goes to Eli, and Eli says, no, I didn't call you. And he went back to sleep, and he hears again, and he goes back to Eli, and Eli says, I didn't call you. You're sleeping. We're both sleeping. And at the third time, Eli recognizes that if he is hearing a voice, it's not him, it must be the Lord. So he told him to say, speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. Now, I would have loved to get into the servant part at 5 years, but that's a whole story by itself, and a whole day of discussion, because some of us feel servants may start maybe in our teens, and maybe that's a bad thing, young adult. But here it is, speak, Lord, thy servant heareth at 5. But so he hears a voice, and he responds as if a human is calling him. And of course, he's with Eli, and he goes to Eli. But Eli is now saying, no, I didn't call. So that we attribute voice, of course, to somebody, voice, who, did you call me? Hey, what did you say? No. So if I'm not calling you, you hear a voice, it must be the Holy Ghost. It must be the Lord. So speak, Lord, I said, and hear it. And of course, God spoke, and he heard it. So at 5, he is hearing a voice. He's not saying at 5 that he's hearing the voice of the Lord. He's hearing a voice, and it must be the human in his environment. So he cannot comprehend that it could be another voice. Now, that's limited because two things. His age, in terms of that kind of stimulation to the intellectual, or rather, let's say thoracic, because he would be into the scriptures, the Torah, and what he would be learning at that time. It wouldn't put him in a place where he would recognize that it is more than this. You can have a voice outside of, and so he's come. So then he obeys very nicely. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth, and of course, uh, he gives himself to that speaking, and initially, it's like, who, how, but he's free and he engages. There's no fear. There's no angel say fear not. Uh, he engages. So at 5, it's simply speak, I hear. And he works out what he hears. Uh, we realize that the adults may have some that needed that intervention with the angels when the angel came and said, fear not. First of all, it's an angel, another sight, um, and then the angel speaks on behalf of God. Or there's a sound somewhere in the atmosphere where there's a still small voice, or it's not a still small voice, and you respond to that in terms of your environment. But the other thing about this is that when does God choose to speak? That's the next thing. So when are you expecting a voice? Because most times we expect voices at particular times. Samuel wasn't expected to hear a voice during the night while he's sleeping, but he did. One doesn't expect a voice when after hours. People say, "Don't call me after 10 by telephone," and we have a culture that has created a norm that you don't visit people late at night because don't disturb. We have to use that. Am I disturbing you? So we don't expect to be disturbed, or we don't expect a voice, but God is, and God speaks any time of day. So here it is in the night. Simon is sleeping and he hears a voice. So one, his sleep is interrupted to hear a voice, and he does. So it must be a profound voice that causes you to get up from sleep. But you must. Isn't that he was so free as a child, allowing himself? Because today, and I want you to fill in the gaps after the broadcast, because there's so much here in my head. After you've grown a little bit, you're old, and you're hearing a voice, how do you rationalize? Firstly, who's disturbing my sleep? It must be a dream. And you turn over on the next side and you go back to sleep. You're not going to get up and say, speak low, let's able to hear it. Who's calling me? You look through the window. And then sometimes, I know sometimes my wife will say, did you hear voice? Did you hear somebody calling you? Did I say speak low? No, I didn't say speak low. I just said, no, I didn't hear anything. Back to sleep. And sometimes again, you wonder, oh, is the Lord calling? Speak Lord, I said, we'll hear it. But it's not something that we do because we are not in a space wanting to be disturbed and wanting to say that we are hearing God. So we have to be, therefore, very cognizant of the fact that, God is. But therefore, if I am always in his presence 24/7, therefore, we have access. And I tell people, sorry, he has access. Let me correct that quickly. He has access. As I tell people, on my phone, I have over 2,000 contacts. Yes, too many. And that means that at any point of day, any one of those contacts could call. So I am accessible to those 2,000 contacts. I can't tell them when to call, not to call, how, why. They're there, they can call. So therefore, it's up to me to access the voice so that when God is with me and I am with him because of salvation, and I say that very proudly, I am with him and he's with me, therefore, with success. So I must want to hear that voice. I must want to hear him say something, or when he speaks, it's not an interruption. It's a welcome. So, do I welcome his voice? Do I welcome him saying something to me, like Samuel? Yes, interruption. We look at David is a very interesting character. The whole issue of him minding sheep, and his father interrupted his life up there as a shepherd and told to go down. So that when daddy speaks, that's fine. When daddy speaks, that's fine. I obey daddy. So that's a human to human thing. He goes down and he hears the voice of the enemy, Goliath, and then he hears the voice of the other soldiers who told him the promise of Saul. And immediately he comes up to a decision. So he's not literally hearing the voice of God, but he is hearing a voice that pushes him into an activity to defend Israel. Is another cause. So there's a rationale here, but he is working according to the Spirit. And I say that in line with who God is and what God's purpose is. And we see him definitely conquering and establishing truth. So when we see later down, like the prophets, let's take Jeremiah or Ezekiel, and when Jeremiah is being told that don't say that you're a youth, but you're a prophet, you're a man of God. I've called you. Say to your mother too, I've called you. So therefore, what are you hearing? How do you argue that? Moses was called, but did they hear a direct voice? Moses had a heart of revenge and killed a man and ran and ended up in Midian with the Midianites, and he lived there for 40 years, and then he came after having this burning bush experience. So here am I again, interrupted. Take off their shoes, this is holy ground, and God speaks. He hears. So when we are considering voice, and especially the voice of God, what it is that we are hearing, what it is that we are declaring in terms of our activity, so that it's important to know that it's important to know that God can speak to us at any time, every time, and we have to respond. It's important to know that we do not need an agenda to validate or verify how God should and would not. So whether you were like little Samuel, or you are like David, or like Jeremiah, that's another thing. When you go into the New Testament and you look at the 12 disciples, they heard Jesus speak, and for some of them there was a come follow me, others brought them, but they ended up being disciples. And even when he spoke, some of them would have been arguing about what he says and why did he say it, and would want to say, don't do that, don't do this. But yet he is speaking. So therefore, it is very incumbent on us to bring a rationale of how we are to determine how we work this voice. I want to get down to, let's say, to two people. Jesus is one, age 12, in the temple. Did he hear a voice saying, "Do not follow your parents"? I hope I'm not causing you to think too much. But I've always wondered, here it is, I'm with my parents and my relatives, and we are in Jerusalem, and we are going back home, and I'm not going down. Because what? Do I hear a voice that says, hey, stay here and talk to the elders, the lawyers and doctors? Did he hear a voice? So he must have heard something that would tell him, don't go. He would have. Do you think so, or do you not think so? I'm not sure. What do you think? But I am not thinking really. I'm just saying that the Bible said it and he stayed. But rationally, you know, you would want to find out from your children, who told you to do this? Why you do this? You must have heard something. We could call it initiative. We could call it intuition. We can call it what? Self-will. I don't know. I could. We could call it free will. But he must have heard something. He must have heard. Hey, stay here. But the issue is that he's already spirit. He's born of spirit, and his ways are spirit. But I'm using the solution to show that how we do things are root. And we must realize that in our roots, that we are hearing and we are responding to God. We are responding, and we are responding to the voice of God. And so it's important for us to really capture that context. It is so real in terms of how we manage and how we declare who we are. And I want us to be very open with that. That hey, I am hearing. So I did that. So my other example is Paul on the road to Damascus. Paul had a hearing of going down to Damascus, and he's going to kill out some Jews. That's his job. And on that, Saul, he hears the voice. He, of course, I forget Paul, Saul have now persecuted me. But of course, he's thrown off the horse. But he's hearing the voice. Now, the voice he's hearing is a voice that he knows. Is that so? The voice that he hears, the voice he knows? But he's a Jew. He's a scholar. He understands Jehovah. He knows about El Shaddai and El Shaddai and all these beautiful people. He knows. He just knows. But yet he does not have a relationship with this God through spirit, because there's no born again experience with Paul yet. He says Saul. And so that this voice that comes, Saul, why thou persecutest me? I persecuted you? Yes. But he hears. And from that hearing, there is a conversion, there is a fasting, there is a revelation, and later on there are 13 epistles. Voila. So that again, from the concept of interruption, again, of course, he was on the way to, and he is interrupted. Tell me, how are we working on this? And I want to leave this with you today. Let us stay here for next hour. But no, it's not my intent. But it's exciting to note how we interpret this context of hearing with disruption. Because when we are disrupted, we don't seem to hear. We have a whole different emotion about why I'm doing something. I can't listen to you now. When God interrupts, you hear his voice, and you know it's God, and you listen to God. And Samuel is interrupted at 5, and Paul is interrupted way down in his late early 70s, and he hears the voice and he responds. And what I like about Paul, it's also a bit of the Abraham thing. You're not into this voice. You're not hearing, obviously, over a period of time. You don't know. You know it exists because you have read the scriptures. Paul has. But now there's a personal hearing. And so therefore, we have a hearing in the air. He had an air, and Paul has an air that says, hey, I hear. So today, I want you to consider the context of interruption. I want you to consider the context of the voice coming at a time when you didn't expect it. How do you respond to that? I want you to consider the issue of the voice whereby we realize that it's important for us to identify that there's a communication that must be established. I want to recognize also that God has to bring us into some kind of dialogue for us to do things and for us to become part of Him. So even if it's like Jesus at age 12, excuse me, getting and gets flowing with the Spirit in him to stay back and not go with his parents because they don't, locally, and I said from our cultures, this is craziness. Who tell you to stay here? But it's all part of the move within him by the Spirit. And then of Paul, who was Saul then, who was saying very nicely afterwards, I hear, yes, Lord, thy servant hear it. What do you want me to do? And he goes in and he prays and he fasts and he is changed and he becomes an apostle. You know the story. But it's about the voice and how we respond to this voice that we say is the Lord's. So may we champion this cause to go forward differently, not having to hear fear not, but just learning how to flow and relate simply by acknowledging that we can be disturbed, we can be interrupted, because God is. And what God has to do at that point in time is essentially important for the next level or for the next move or to take us to realize His purpose. And so it's important for us to identify that. So grace and peace and multiply, and see you next Thursday as we continue to talk about the voice. And I really want to continue this conversation about our humanity in terms of relationship with the voice and command, and how it works outside, how to get it to work outside of our emotions, and to really be profound in establishing what the voice is. And of course, relationship, because once you have dialogue and communication, you are building